Hello and welcome to Trails Worth Hiking, the show that brings you some of the most interesting backpacking and trekking routes in the world. I'm your host, Jeremy Pendry. In the first part of the show, we bring you the story and history of a trail. Then we tell you what it's like to hike the trail and how you can do it. On this episode, we return to the Himalayas, this time to travel on a newly restored historical trail that crosses an entire country from east to west, where we'll have both culturally rich homestays and camping opportunities as we pass through 27 different villages, where we get to know the local people and customs as we return to the Himalayan kingdom of Bhutan to hike the Trans Bhutan Trail. Hello and welcome to the show, everyone. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for joining me for this special episode where for the first time on this show, we'll have a tourism minister, or actually a former tourism minister on the show. And not just a minister of any country, but a minister from the Himalayan kingdom of Bhutan, which is a fantastic place for trekking, of course. Our guest is Dorji Dhradhul, who is the former Director General of the Tourism Council of Bhutan. He is also a former governor of the Gasa district in Bhutan. I appreciate Dorji coming on the show, and I appreciate his candor, especially in addressing Bhutan's tourism policies and policy goals, which you will hear all about. The Himalayas are a vast and culturally diverse region. There are endless treks in the region that are worth doing. In the past, we've covered several treks in the region. This is our second time in Bhutan. Last time, we had the perspective of a trekker coming from outside the country to experience Bhutan, which is a valuable perspective. That was in episode 62 regarding the Snowman Trek. This time we'll hear about Bhutan from a very different perspective, and from not just a citizen of Bhutan, but a citizen who has a perspective from inside the government, in addition to talking about the Trans Bhutan Trail. We'll hear about some really interesting topics, including the idea of high-value, low-volume tourism. We'll hear about Bhutan's sustainable development fee. We'll hear a bit more about gross national happiness, which is an idea we covered in the Snowman Trek episode. And we'll also hear about the beginning of development of a mindfulness city in Bhutan, which is a really neat concept that I think is worth talking about as well. All right, let me back up and start by talking a little bit about Bhutan itself. We did cover most of this in the Snowman Trek episode 62, but a quick review is in order for those who didn't listen to that episode. Bhutan is in the eastern Himalayas. It has a little over 725,000 people, so it's much smaller in population than the other countries in the region. It's a democratic constitutional monarchy, which means it has a king as head of state, but a prime minister as the head of the government. It also has a head of the state religion, which is the Vajrayana branch of Buddhism. And that person is called the Je Khenpo. That's the title for that religious leader. And so you have three different authority figures who have different areas of jurisdiction, essentially. Bhutan has been a Buddhist country since the 8th century AD, when Buddhism was introduced and became the dominant religion. Bhutan has never been colonized, occupied, or governed by an outside power. And the current monarchy lineage is actually fairly recent, having been established in the early 20th century. So the first of the primary concepts I discussed with Dorji that I want to mention is the idea of high-value, low-volume tourism. This is the idea of focusing on the quality of the experience for each visitor rather than having as many visitors as possible. As you will have guessed, this also means that it may be a more expensive experience than is available in other countries. And by definition, low volume means less people will be able to experience Bhutan. As Dorji explains in our conversation, that is a choice that Bhutan has made to focus on sustainability rather than volume. The goal is to prevent over-tourism and conserve the environment and the culture of Bhutan. That said, as Dorji explains, Bhutan is open for business and wants even more tourists than it currently is getting, though the barrier to entry is high for many people. And that brings us to the second concept that I wanted to highlight, which is the sustainable development fee. One major aspect of high-value, low-volume tourism in Bhutan is this fee that visitors pay. Currently, the fee is $100 per person per day paid to the government. Dorji describes the history of the fee, which has been part of tourism in Bhutan for decades. Notably, the money is used to make the lives of Bhutanese citizens better. It goes to infrastructure, healthcare, and education. And of course, one result of this fee is that Bhutan gets a different kind of tourist than many neighboring countries. And it's a kind of tourist, I guess, that they believe is less impactful on their culture and the environment. Dorji discusses the SDF, the development fee, including its evolution over time and the reasons for it. That brings us to the next concept I want to cover before we go to the conversation, which is gross national happiness. For any of you who have heard of Bhutan, it's likely to be for one reason, this concept of gross national happiness. I talked about this on the Snowman Trek episode, but it is a central concept and one that Dorji and I discussed, so I'm going to repeat the basics here. This is the idea that what is really important to measure in a country is not simply economic activity or development, as measured through gross domestic product, or GDP, but rather the more important metric of success is the collective happiness and well-being of its people. This concept was introduced in 1972 by the fourth king of Bhutan, when it was declared more important than gross domestic product. The idea drew upon Buddhist concepts of compassion and non-harming of others. There's the 4 pillars of GNH, which are sustainable and equitable socio-economic development, environmental conservation, preservation and promotion of culture, and good government. There's also what they call 9 domains for determining gross national happiness, and those are psychological well-being, health, time use, education, cultural diversity and resilience, good governance, community vitality, ecological diversity and resilience, and living standards. Bhutan has a Gross National Happiness Commission responsible for implementing the policy. The first survey was conducted in 2008, and additional surveys have been conducted since. In 2011, the UN General Assembly passed a resolution urging member nations to follow the example of Bhutan in measuring happiness. The following year, in 2012, the UN issued the first World Happiness Report. Dorji explains how every policy Bhutan implements essentially goes through a screening process to make sure it will operate consistent with the principles of gross national happiness. So it's not just a concept or policy statement. It's an actual framework that they use for creating and designing government policy. It's a filter, in other words, that every policy proposal has to go through. So Dorji and I will talk about that. And finally, I want to highlight something that Dorji raised at the end of our conversation, which is the idea of the new mindfulness city being built in Bhutan. And this is such a unique concept that I thought I'd highlight it, even though it's not directly related to the Trans Bhutan Trail itself. They've called it the Galepu Mindfulness City Project. It's a master plan city that's being developed that is designed to integrate economic, cultural, and spiritual development while being ecologically sustainable. It's located in the part of Bhutan that is close to India to facilitate the economic exchange goals of the city. And Bhutan, of course, has applied the principles of gross national happiness in how they are designing and building the project. To facilitate putting the city together, they're actually making it a separate sort of state within a state for a period of time as it gets on its feet. So it'll have its own set of laws that will apply during the development phase, and it will ultimately be reintegrated with Bhutan and have the same laws as the rest of the country. But for now, it's getting special treatment. As Dorji points out, the city is planned to actually be much bigger than even Singapore, which is a fairly large city in Asia, if all goes as planned. So it will be interesting to see how this develops over time. There are many master plan cities in the world, and some have been more successful than others. So this will be interesting to keep an eye on. So those are some of the big concepts Dorji and I talk about that I wanted to highlight before you hear the conversation. I also want to mention the Trans Bhutan Trail itself, of course. This is a 403-kilometer trail, so about 250 miles. It goes from Ha in the west to Trashigang in the east of Bhutan. The east is a more remote part of Bhutan and has seen much less tourism, so the trail brings some tourism to that part of the country. The trail crosses 27 villages and goes through 9 different districts. Along the trail, there are 21 temples, there's 12 mountain passes, there are a whole lot of bridges and Buddhist monuments as well, and it goes through a variety of different ecological settings. Where the Trans Bhutan Trail is today was a primary thoroughfare across Bhutan for centuries for pilgrims, traders, and the military. It was also used by messengers called garps. These were essentially trail runners that carried messages from town to town. The trail route is also important as far as military history goes because it was used to move troops to repel invaders at various times. But this route had fallen into disuse after a highway was built in the region in the early 1960s. People essentially abandoned the trail and were using the road. But restoration of the trail began in 2018 and was completed in late 2022. Restoration was done by the government of Bhutan in partnership with an organization called the Bhutan Canada Foundation. This is a Canadian organization that sends teachers to rural Bhutan and provides scholarships to Bhutanese to study in Canada. There's also a Trans Bhutan Trail organization, which is a nonprofit designed to maintain and promote the trail. They offer tours of various parts of the trail or the whole trail, but you can also get tours through other private tour companies. One interesting sort of modern feature along the Trans Bhutan Trail is that there are interactive signposts with QR codes to link you to information about the trail. So there's more than 170 of those signposts, and there's an app you can download so that you can get lots of additional color and context and other kinds of information as you hike the trail. So with that background, let's jump into my conversation with Dorji Dhradhul about the Trans Bhutan Trail. Dorji Dhradhul, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
So you have contributed enormously to Bhutan over the years through numerous positions you've held, including as a governor of the Gasa district. But one of your more recent positions, and a very important one, is as the former Director General of the Tourism Council of Bhutan. What does the Tourism Council do, and what was your work there?
Yes, as a head of the Tourism Council of Bhutan is the apex organization for tourism of the country. As the head of that, my main responsibility or the council's main responsibility is to help develop and promote and also to preserve our country, for instance, for the visitors as a sustainable and not only for the present time benefit, but for all times to come. So basically, it is being guided by our policy of high value, low volume, meaning tourism is not just for today, it's for future also. So therefore, our main function or mandate is to uphold this tourism policy of high value, low volume, which in a very layman's term is sustainable tourism for all times to come.
Can you explain a little bit more what you mean by high value, low volume tourism?
In a simple layman's term, we are talking about sustainable tourism, meaning the tourism, the number of, because when you talk about in a normal kind of terminology, when you talk about tourism, we are always talking about the number of arrivals, yeah? I mean, all destinations, when you talk of tourism, they talk about the arrivals. But so therefore, this policy of high value, low volume actually is revolving around that number of arrivals. So what we are saying is, we will try to manage or regulate the number of visitors that we get in our country, which is in sync with our carrying capacity. So we don't want to have kind of a totally an open door policy wherein any number of tourists, if they want to come, we just let in, and we are not worried about what kind of experiences they go. Because the main crux of this policy is, while we want visitors to come here, but we want to make sure that whoever comes to our country as a visitor, they should get this high value experiences. We are not here really talking about the money that they give us, the visitors, but more than that, we are talking about the value that will give the visitors. So therefore, if we are able to manage the numbers within our carrying capacity, then the high value experiences will be ensured to our visitors. So in essence, it's that. So when we do this, meaning there will be a kind of a less impact on our resources, whether it is a natural resources or even the services that we provide. We are talking about hotels and things like that. So it will be all kind of a nicely kind of a managed. So this is basically the essence of high value, low volume. Ultimately, it's about sustainable tourism and also giving a kind of a best experience, high value experience to our visitors.
So that's a very different approach, I think, than your neighbors have taken, like Nepal or India or China to tourism. Why do you think Bhutan has taken a different approach to tourism than its neighbors? Is it primarily to preserve the environment and for sustainability reasons?
You are right. I think, in fact, we are seeing maybe there are only few countries, as far as I know, but I could be wrong, that follow kind of a similar approach. But the good news is that we hear that now other destinations, other countries are also trying to, follow our kind of approach. So that's something we are looking forward to. But why we are taking this approach? And I tell you, you may be surprised. I don't know. We have taken this approach not a recent thing. Our tourism started when Bhutan started to have our first tourists in 1974. And that was again the time when Bhutan opened for the first time to tourism. And believe it or not, we had this policy of high value, low volume from that day one when we started. So high value, low volume. Those days actually, now looking back, I mean, even today we all talk about it, and we think looking back in 1974, this was not required. The sustainable tourism not required because then we didn't have the present challenges in tourism like say mass tourism, over tourism, even the climate change, the environmental impact, the pressure on the resources. These were not there in early 1970s. But despite that, we had this policy. Now, why is my view is, and I think in the country, I think we all believe is that the credit goes to our leadership. Then Bhutan was under the golden reign of the fourth king of Bhutan, His Majesty King Jigme Singye Wangchuk. And another interesting thing about that is when he took this policy decision, he was barely 16 or 17 years old. He was that young.
Wow.
Today we are still kind of questioning this. We are still amazed, I mean, how can such a young king in a teenager age have taken such a visionary policy? And today, all of us, not only Bhutan, even, I mean, as I said earlier, even the world is trying to, appreciate this. So therefore, the credit goes. I mean, why Bhutan, we started this, I would definitely say the credit goes to His Majesty, the fourth king, who came up with this idea, who has been such a visionary, far-sighted leader, and today it makes such a great thing. But the surprising thing is that this happened in early 70s when this was not at all required because of our leadership.
So we're going to be talking today about the Trans Bhutan Trail. And before we do that, I wanted to ask in general, how is trekking tourism important to Bhutan, or how important is it to have trekkers in Bhutan versus other kinds of tourists?
While trekking tourism is also important because, in fact, we seem to have some of the best treks in the world. I mean, not really best treks, but some very interesting treks. For example, the Snowman Trek is considered to be one of the toughest treks in the world, which, popularly says that more people have climbed, Mount Everest, the highest mountain in the world, to then trek the Snowman Trek. So likewise, we have so many other treks. But despite this, our policy of tourism, high value, low volume. Basically, any experiences that we give in terms of tourism, offering as a product, it has to be guided by high value, low volume policy and approach. So therefore, we are not giving kind of a special status to trekking tourism. It is important. But at the same time, we have other tourism experiences like, the cultural tourism, which is very popular. We have the spiritual tourism. We have wellness, well-being tourism. We have agro-tourism, eco-tourism, community-based tourism. So all this, and now we are also trying to venture into adventure tourism because as of now, in the name of adventure tourism, I think maybe it's only the trekking. Yes, but we want to also now diversify in this adventure tourism. So basically what I'm saying is trekking tourism is very important. It has some very special characteristics of its own, but then we are not giving a special status to this. And for us, any experiences that we offer to visitors, whatever may be the experiences, we give this kind of equal status. And basically, this is being, mandated by our policy of high value, low volume.
So let's talk now about the Trans Bhutan Trail. First, tell me, what is the Trans Bhutan Trail? And then what was your involvement in reviving this trail?
Yeah, Trans Bhutan Trail. It's actually a recent thing, something that we have revived and restored in 2022, right after the COVID. Bhutan was closed for tourism to the world for almost like 2.5 years actually, from 20 to 2022 towards end. So it happened during that time, and it is as of today. Of course, this is a very popular kind of a trail, Trans Bhutan Trail. One of the could be very long. I think you will know that it is about 403 kilometers. But the significance or the special characteristic of this trail is this trail is not something that we created new. It was there since 16th century, and it used to be the main kind of a highway in our country. And actually, it extends. I mean, today after restoring, it extends from the one end from the east to the west. So total is 403. And even in those days, starting from 16th century, that used to be the main kind of a lifeline for people to move around, and people in the sense that from all walks of life. I mean, that was the main kind of a highway, and it has a lot of historical significance because it was through that kind of a trail route where people in the country those days, they came together, they met, and then transfer of ideas, trading, and even pilgrimages, and also those days, I mean, the important messages that whatever everything has to be done on that trail. But by early 60s, because our modern development, so-called the modern development in Bhutan started in early 60s. In fact, our first modern plan, 5-year plan development started in 1965. Yeah. So then by 1965, 65 towards late 60s, we started to have the first motor road. Mm-hmm. Then maybe by mid 70s, by end of 70s and early 80s, we started to have more roads. And then as the motor road was coming, the vehicles started to come. Then this route got slowly, I mean, on its own, by default, it was getting not used. Mm-hmm. Because, I mean, why would people use if they have an option of traveling faster and more convenient? So almost for like 60, let's say 70, 80, 90, almost like for more than 50 years, it was getting almost like unused. So when we were restoring this in 2020, starting from 2020, it was almost like it was almost not there, So in some places we even had to, look for very elderly people to help us with the, finding out the trail and all. Of course, finally we did it. So that's one aspect. So we are reviving a very historical trail that was almost dying. It was died, but we have restored this. And the reason for restoring is, and also the vision for restoring came again from our present monarch, His Majesty. It was his vision that we need to revive this. And for, I think, a couple of reasons. First reason is, as I just explained, it's such a historical thing. I mean, it would be shame, big loss for the country. It was not revived. We have lost this history. That was the first one. Second is, I think His Majesty had this vision that, because for us, while we also want to be a fully developed modern country, but at the same time, we don't want to forget our history and our past. So therefore, this trail, if we revive this would be a great bridge, a connection between, past and of course present, and more importantly, into the future. So therefore, now our younger generations, our children and all, they are already being introduced to this, and some of our parents, I mean, this trail is not just for the visitors. I mean, it is as much, even more important for our own people, for our younger generations to get, familiarized with this trail, and we make some, deliberate efforts for the parents to take our children on this trail. So therefore, it is about connecting, keeping our history alive, and also connecting the trails. I mean, between the present, past, and the future generation. And yeah, basically that, and also the other, by the way, is this also becomes very unique and interesting tourism offer to an outside visitor, and it has already got some recognition. Like for example, in 2022, the Time magazine has named this trail as one of the great places to visit, great places of the world. So like that, yeah. So it's already becoming. So basically, the vision comes from the Golden Throne or His Majesty, and also with that kind of a really novel objectives of first restoring and making it available. The more importantly, I mean, getting this connection, keeping the history or the culture, anything, heritage associated with this alive.
So for someone who's never been to Bhutan, what would they see on this trail? Can you describe for people who have never been there what this part of the country looks like and what the terrain is like and what one might experience walking on the Trans Bhutan Trail.
This trail, if you do the whole stretch, you will be covering around 27 counties and about nine districts. So our country is made of 20 districts. So almost like half of a country can be covered in this trail. And it has, the cultural part. The cultural part in the sense that when you do this trail, while we have a modern accommodation also, but we are also promoting is the homestay. So therefore, since I said it goes through villages and counties, so some of the workers in this trail, they can stay in the homestay. So therefore, there's a lot of opportunity to be, immersed and experience the authentic Bhutanese kind of a rural setting kind of experience. That is one cultural immersion. And the second is, of course, again, by default, Bhutan is a very kind of a spiritual kind of a space here. And along this trail, we can come across a lot of monasteries and, temples and things like that. I mean, a lot of stupas and all. So as we walk along this trail, you cannot miss some of these monuments. So therefore, that spiritualism and pilgrimages also comes in. But more importantly, more interestingly, is again the wildlife. While the trail doesn't really go into high mountain, I think the highest is around 4,000. Whereas the snowman trek, it can go very high. Snowman trek can go
Yes.
as high as almost like, 6,000 also. But this
Hmm.
one will go at the most around 4,000. And then you can see a different type of a diverse variety of a wildlife, the biodiversity, like because Bhutan is again very well known for the number of bird species. We are supposed to be having around 700 bird species, and some of these are really endangered. Like along this trail, of course, we can see some of the very kind of flagship species, like what we call as the pheasant, the blood bellied kind of a pheasant, and then we have
Hmm.
some again other endangered species like the pandas, the red pandas,
Hmm.
the deer. So a lot of flora and fauna, we can see that. And also, interesting thing about this trail is whenever you want to get off the trail, you can always come out because this cuts right through the center of a country from east to west. And there's again, of course, not exactly along that, but we are today we already have a motor road again
Hmm.
cutting our country from west to east. So from time to time, from section to section, you come across this motor road. So therefore, that is also another kind of interesting thing you can. While sometimes you'll see a rural kind of a setting there, natural setting, and sometimes suddenly you can also come into some kind of a modern setting where you have the roads and you can see the vehicles traveling. So yes, I think of course the scenery, the scenes that it goes without saying. Bhutan is a paradise for photographers, and so this trail definitely offers that. But I would say the most interesting thing would be the immersion opportunity that they get with the local people in the
Hmm.
Bhutanese kind of a home. It's still a very rural setting there. You can see and mix with the people there. Yeah, so these are some of the very, I would say, interesting experiences that doing this trail could enjoy.
How difficult of a trek is this? Is this a trek that most people could do? I know it's not the snowman trek. The snowman trek is very, very difficult. But if somebody wanted to see a big part of Bhutan, but was maybe a person in their 60s or 70s, or someone who's not prepared to hike to 5 or 6,000 meters, is this a trek that most people could hike?
I believe so. I agree. Anybody can do, I think. The whole stretch, if you do, it will take more than a month.
Hmm.
But again, the beauty of the stretch is you don't have to do the whole stretch. You can always pick a different section. That's also done. But just to answer your question directly, yes, anybody can do this. And in fact, let me share. I just remember there is a very kind of a famous nun. Actually, she's from Britain. I think she's a English woman,
Hmm.
and she has been working, helping Bhutan in raising funds for our disabled population here. And presently, I'm not so sure whether she has started or not. She has actually announced fundraising for this disabled population to do this trail, the whole trail.
Wow.
So she must be definitely more than 50. must be
Hmm.
even 60. I don't know. I mean, I hope I'm not wrong, but I've not met her personally, but I've seen her a lot of
Hmm.
places. She's in Bhutan. She's come back both to UK and here, and if it is not yet started, it's going to start soon. So she has actually announced raising a fund, doing this trek from end to end. She's going to do this, and I'm sure it's going to take about more than a month. So therefore, yes, this trek can be done by anyone. I think.
You mentioned that people have the opportunity to stay in homes, to have homestays. Are there also parts of the trek that are still set up for camping or maybe established campsites? I saw something about that on the website for the Trans Bhutan Trail. Or could you stay in homes the entire way?
I think I forgot to mention that. Yes, I mean the camping options are there in this trail. On this trail, we have already designated few the camping sites. Again, one special consideration for our trekking is the campsites are always designated. You cannot camp anywhere you like.
Hmm.
So the campsites have been already designated by Department of Tourism. So even on this trail, you have an option. You can do a camping in a tent or you can stay in a homestay. So that option is there. And in fact, my recommendation would be it should be a mix. I mean, sometimes you should stay in
Sure.
a homestay. Sometimes I think you should stay in a camp. Yeah.
What time of year is the best time to do this trek in Bhutan?
Now, this is a very kind of a tricky question because this also relates to our the overall tourism policy. Now, traditionally, before COVID, that means before 2020, Bhutan, by policy, we were kind of promoting Bhutan as a two-season destination. Like one is in spring, one is in autumn. So basically, we are saying winter and summer are not welcomed. I mean, these are not good season for visitors. And the reason then was because since our, in terms of our development status, we are not so developed. So therefore, our road conditions, especially some of these roads,
Mm.
goes over very high passes around 3,000, 4,000. So in the winter, it gets very icy, snows and all. So therefore, there's a lot of risk. Sometimes the roads get blocked, the cars get stranded in these areas for sometimes a day. Similarly, for the same reason, even in summer, we have a lot of rains, monsoon rains, and again, the road conditions were not so good. So therefore, again, same problem. There's risk also sometimes they could be falling, shooting boulders and things like that. So therefore, mainly in consideration of the convenience and the comfort of the visitors, we didn't want to take this chance because we knew that our road conditions are not good. So therefore, we didn't want our visitors to get stranded in all this, in such places. So therefore, we were intentionally, by policy, we were saying, don't come in winter and summer, but please come in spring and autumn because that is the time when no rain, no snow, so everything is fine, yeah. And why I'm saying policy-wise is because those days we had a different kind of a tourism tariff, and the rates were even different by almost like by $50. If you come in summer and winter, you have to pay $50 less, and if you come in
Hmm.
spring and autumn, you have to pay $50 more. But after COVID, when we reopened after COVID, so that means from 2022, we have done away with that policy. Now we are saying, please come all 12 months. Bhutan is open. It has its own unique, the different seasons have its own. Now we don't have much anymore. I mean, of course, we cannot say with 100% guarantee, but the road conditions are very much into it is kind of all weather season, all weather kind of a road, So therefore, we are very confident. So therefore, we are saying now, come everyone. But having said this, now policy-wise, it's all 12 months. So I will not officially actually recommend, just one or two seasons. Officially, it is all 12 months. But based on that thing, if somebody is not really like snow or cold, or if somebody doesn't really like the wet time, then I think definitely they will avoid the summer and the winter.
Hmm.
And of course, then the next one is the spring and winter. So this is what I would like to say.
So you said that it might be a good opportunity to hike parts of this trail also if you didn't have time to hike the whole trail. Are there particular sections of the trail that you would recommend people consider, or do guiding companies have programs for only part of the trail instead of the whole trail if somebody wanted to hike a shorter route?
Oh yes, yes. In fact, while Trans Bhutan Trail is already kind of an organization, is a non-profit organization. They also organize such trips depending upon the interest and the demand of the client. Let's say, and also even the other tour operators, they can also organize. For example, even Now I'm no more with the government. I also help my wife with the tour company. She has a tour company, and we also, for example, do. So basically, what I'm saying is there is already kind of a package developed, or we can even tailor make depending upon the interest of the client. But having said this, now if I have to make a recommendation as being a former involved in this tourism and also here certain stretches, I would say, and the reason is mainly because of the area and also some kind of historical history to this. Like one, I would say, is in the central Bhutan. It's a place called Trongsa. It is supposed to be the center of our country. The district
Mm-hmm.
is one district. As I said earlier, we have a 20 districts. So Trongsa is a central district. And those days, that used to be the kind of a gateway between east and west Bhutan. So from Trongsa to Buntang, which is a kind of a whole day trek, I think you can do it in a whole day, or maybe if you are not really want to do it too much of a pressure, then maybe halt in between, maybe a halt one night. So Trongsa and Buntang, why I'm saying is, and it can be from Buntang to Trongsa also. So it can be both ways.
Mm-hmm.
So why I'm saying this too is this Buntang is again a place when our monarchy was established. At one point in time, Buntang used to be the seat of our kings. Yeah. So, and also in central Bhutan. And Tongsa also, before our monarchy was established, Tongsa used to be that kind of a power center. And we have a very beautiful kind of a fortress there from 16th century, and similarly in Bontang also. And the trek between these two places also very scenic and also
Mm-hmm.
start from a subtropical and then Bontang is kind of a alpine. So yeah, so that is one I would recommend from Tongsa and Bontang. It can start from if you start from Tongsa to Bontang, it will be more of an uphill climb. But if you come from Bontang to Tongsa, it will be a downhill. So that's one. Then other one is if you come towards the western side, again we have another called Dochula to Punakha. And Dochula is just about 1 hour's drive from our capital city.
Okay.
You drive to Dochula, and then from there you start trekking to another valley called Punakha. And again, that would for a young, let's say, trekker, they might be able to do it one, but for a little bit kind of our age, maybe you also in a day. Again, it is very scenic. The starting point is very scenic. It is at a very high kind of path. It's almost like 3,500 meters. From there, you start to descend into another valley. And Punakha is again a very historical place, and that place, Punakha, used to be those days. We used to have a summer capital and winter capital.
Mm.
So Punakha used to be the winter capital. But of course, now we don't have that practice anymore. But still,
Mm-hmm.
Punakha also supposed to have one of the most scenic culturally. The monuments and things like that. Yeah, so we can just put together any kind of a depending upon the time and the energy and the interest of the clients. We can just and because we have such a huge choice. From we're talking about 250 miles. Yeah,
Yes.
so from
Yes.
east to west, and also like for example now, if you have more time, then of course you can go even further east because the east and central Bhutan is very much different in terms of landscape, in terms of everything from the west Bhutan. And as of now, while we are again the government is doing putting a lot of efforts to take our visitors to other parts of the country, but traditionally because of our app by default, our international airport is located in the west,
Mm-hmm.
and also our road entry is also located in the west, into the country. So therefore, most of our visitors are just, visiting the so-called the western part of the country.
Okay.
So yeah, then if you have to go to the east, then you need more time and more days.
If someone wants to hike the whole trek, would you recommend they go east to west or west to east? Or does it not matter?
Yeah, I think honestly, I think it doesn't matter.
Okay.
And actually, you know what? If somebody wants to start from east to west, then now we have an option. Now, visitors can, enter Bhutan from eastern. The nearest airport would be in Indian city called Guwahati. You land in that Indian city in Assam. From there, you drive about 2 or 3 hours to enter Bhutan from the eastern port. Then you go drive another maybe 6 hours to Trashigang, and that will be the starting point from the east.
Mm-hmm.
So then you can come all the way to the west. But if you are starting from the west, from Ha, then of course you fly into Paro International Airport, and then of course you from International Airport to Paro, Ha, the flag off from starting point from west would be just about 2 hours drive from the International Airport. Then from there you can start Yeah, so I really don't have any kind of a strong recommendation. It can be both ways, I think, equally. Yeah.
Okay. One of the things that's interesting to me about Bhutan is the way it has requirements about guides. So I think everybody has to have a guide, of course, when they're trekking. But also, it's my understanding, do the animals carry the gear like yaks or other animals carry the equipment or are there porters? How does that work for carrying someone's equipment when they're hiking?
Guided by this tourism policy of high value, low volume, our trekking also has certain specific routes, as you have already highlighted. Especially in trekking, if a visitor is going on trekking, you need to have a mandatorily to have a routinely certified trekking guide. That is one.
Okay.
Second is your camping sites has to be a designated one. You cannot camp, and
Hmm.
that sometimes causes us really a big problem because sometimes it so happens that the because of the weather and sometimes because of the some of the trekkers they're not able to keep up with that schedule, so they are forced to camp before reaching the designated site on that day. So sometimes they get this kind of pressure. But of course, if such a situation arises, then of course there will be no penalties. But then if they do it on, without any kind of genuine reason and they camp in a place that is not designated. So therefore, camping in designated sites. And also, very interesting, another rule is because if you are in that kind of high altitude, maybe above tree line, yeah, if you have to camp there, and then if especially the visitors, sometimes they really enjoy the bonfire, the campfire, yeah. So, but then at the above the tree line, you know that the trees and the vegetation will be very scarce. So, therefore,
Yes. Yes.
you can do a campfire, bonfire there, but then you have to bring your own firewood. You cannot
Ah,
harvest, you cut any kind of shrubs or anything from that site. So you have to bring your own firewood all the way from the valleys. Yeah. So basically, these are kind of guidelines mainly to ensure the respect of high value, low volume to preserve. Yeah, and then using of the animals, we still use this, especially on the trekking. We use pack on it, and also
hmm,
the yak. I don't know whether you know an animal called yak.
yes. Yes.
Yeah. So really in high altitude, because some of this, like for example, if you go on a snowman trek, you have to cross many snow-capped kind of passes.
Hmm.
So there, the preferred transport is through yak, and they carry all the equipment and also not only that, the
Hmm.
rations and everything. This the horses and yak, depending upon where you are, they very much help because people they really cannot carry. I mean, the guys are there
Hmm.
especially even the guide and even the visitors, they just carry a small backpack, yeah. I mean, just for
Sure.
otherwise the rest of these equipments are being now helped by animals. So the horses and the yaks are still very much in place. So without them, I think still trekking will be very difficult. Jeremy, let me also say, but we also have a rule
Ah,
so that the animals are not overburdened, the animal rights. So
I see.
while of course we are not able to monitor so aggressively or so diligently, but we have a rule that a maximum load of, let's say, and I think I remember, I think it is if it is a horse or even for yak, we can put a load of just maximum of 50 kg on an animal. So 25 on one side, 25. So if you overburden animals, that is against law. Again, this is in the respect for the animal rights and all. That rule is also there. So we are very, very kind of mindful in terms of whatever we do. I mean, when you talk about high value, low volume at the cost of human beings' experience and pleasure, we don't really also want to burden and be unfair to our animals. Of course, so this was also we are doing.
One of the things you mentioned a little while ago was the daily fee. I think it's called the Daily Sustainable Development Fee. Could you talk a little bit about what that is and what that costs for tourists to visit Bhutan?
Oh, yes, yes. It is called as sustainable development fee. Those days, it used to be called as royalty. And now, again, that's another fact I think I forgot to mention. So when we talk about high value, low volume, how do we operationalize this? Okay. So of course, there are many strategies. Some of them I've already mentioned. But one of the main strategy or is through implementation of this so-called sustainable development fee. Now, this was there in place when we started our tourism in 1974. Of course, the amount was different, Then it used to be called as royalty. Like now today it's known as sustainable fee. So it started from there. And today, after the COVID, we made quite a big news in the world of tourism, because we increased that to 200 USD per day per person. 200. It used to be 65 USD
Mm-hmm.
before COVID. And another fact I want to share is it has been 65 for almost like 4 decades. It has never changed.
Mm.
Everything else has changed in the world, in our country, but that didn't change. The royalty or the SDF remained at 65 USD for almost more than a 4 decades. Then when COVID came and when we were trying to, relook at and reinforce our policy, then we a lot of rational basis based on that we increased it to 200. But then things happened which we had not foreseen. The tourism pickup was not happening as we had expected. I mean, not only Bhutan, even globally, but of course in our part of the world it was even more difficult.
Sure.
So because of that, and presently, and people believe that our arrivals are still very low. I mean, in 2019, just before COVID, that was our highest arrival. We had received around 315,000,
Mm-hmm.
and today, after almost 2 years after reopening, we are still not able to achieve 100,000 also.
Mm.
So we are still way below our carrying capacity. So therefore, especially those people who are directly dependent on tourism, like the tour operators, the hotels and all, they kind of totally say that it's because of the tourism policy that the hike in the SGF has actually encouraging people to visit our country. And while my personal belief is, well, this could have contributed, but I definitely say it's not everything because of this. There are so many other reasons why our arrivals
Mm-hmm.
are still low. I mean, of course, the increased SGF could have contributed, but then that's not it. But despite this, the government has actually decided. So presently, we are in a discount period till 2027. So it has now been reduced to 100 USD per person per day, and that is SGF, and that money actually goes directly to the government. And for that, the visitors don't get anything in return, tangible, because they have to pay extra for their, everything else. Yeah?
Sure.
So that goes as a fee for sustainable development. Now, what do you mean by sustainable development fee? Basically, the money goes to the national exchequer, and then from there it gets again pumped back into into a concrete kind of a tourism project, sustainability. I mean, to help in sustaining the certain resources of tourism. But more importantly, this goes to fund the lives of the welfare services of our country to our Bhutanese population.
Mm-hmm.
So you know that I don't know whether you know or not. We provide like healthcare is totally free, education is free, and so many other services are also still given free, because as you will understand, Bhutan is still a developing country. Our people are still not educated with our earnings revenue, so we still need a support from the government. So SDA actually goes towards that, meeting all these kind of things. So in a way, the visitors, they are actually not just paying a toll fee. They should not consider this as toll fee, but basically this consider is as their contribution to our country directly, but indirectly this goes towards promoting sustainable tourism
Mm-hmm.
not only in Bhutan, but as an example for the world. Because at the end of the day, we believe that the whole world should follow our kind of a policy. Of course, whether it's possible or not possible, it depends. But if possible, why not? I mean, make our tourism everywhere sustainable. I mean, something that will be also good for the future generations to come. So therefore, my request here, I mean, I'm sure this will be listened by so many people, so especially non-Bhutanese. So don't consider the STA, the fees that you're paying, as just a toll fee. I mean, a toll gate kind of a fee, but rather it is your contribution to our country, and especially to sustainability not only of Bhutan tourism but of the world tourism. So that's something that I would like to say. And of course, why I have to say this is because that is also in some quarters as it's been highly criticized because of this policy. Our tourism is also being critiqued as being elitist, that we are only kind of welcoming
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that kind of people who can afford, because if you're not able to pay $100 per day per then you're not able to come to Bhutan. So yeah, I mean, this kind of comments are there, but then our intention is not really to just to have only the, rich people. That's not our intention. But in the implementation, it appears to be so, but then something that we cannot help it. But our intention is to make it good for everyone. Whoever comes to Bhutan, I think it has to be, they also should have, they should still value for their time and the money that they put in. So therefore, through that, we are able to regulate our arrivals actually. Another interesting thing is now, as of now, as I said earlier, the arrivals is still very low. Yeah, and still we are not able to meet our target. But despite that, we are not seeing, okay, we are doing away with SGS. Now let everybody come. Yeah, anybody come. Or maybe if you do this, maybe, I don't know, maybe the arrivals number will increase, but maybe it will help for some time, maybe for 1 or 2, 3 years, maybe it will help us, the economy. But then if the damage is done within the 3 years, then to go back to the original one, I think it is going to be very difficult. So therefore, government is still deciding not to take such a drastic short-term measures. I mean, we are always going for the long term. I mean, I'm sure you know about our government philosophy, gross national happiness. So it is guided by that philosophy.
Yes. Okay, last question about the Trans Bhutan Trail, and then I wanted to ask a couple of wrap-up questions before we go. The last question I have on the Trans Bhutan Trail is, with all the wonderful trails that Bhutan has, like the Snowman Trek, the Jomolhari Trek, the Druk Path, why should people consider the Trans Bhutan Trail instead of the more established trails in Bhutan? What does the Trans Bhutan Trail offer that those other trails don't offer?
Yes, I think that's a very good question, and I like this question because, yes, I would say Trans Bhutan Trail is a special, and mainly for the reason that this is a trail that actually takes you through our villages. You'll be meeting a lot of communities, as I say, 27 counties and 9 districts, and also you'll be going through communities like Snowman Trek, for example. If you talk about, except in 2 places, you'll not come across any kind of a human settlement. So, of course, maybe more than 2. I'm sorry for that, actually. But in Trans Bhutan Trail, you will be meeting on and off with our settlement, and also a mix of, sometimes not really urban, but mostly it is still rural, but at the same time, see. So basically, there will be a lot of opportunities for you to interact with our local population, our culture, our heritage. But this is good not only for the visitors, but this is good for our people. Because when they come interact with the visitors, one is, of course, the interaction opportunity they get with the visitors from different nationalities. Second is they get a direct benefit. If they're staying within the homestays, they get the money directly. Yeah, but otherwise, if you're doing on a other kind of a trek, then the money, of course, goes, but it will go more to the tour operators and all. So the population will not get directly. So therefore, mainly for that reason, one is both for the visitors and for our own people, there's a more opportunity for them to come together, and also for our grassroots people to get the direct benefits from tourism, because that has been one of the challenges, one of the complaints or challenges, that the benefits from tourism are not getting equally or distributed, or because people, the communities and the people are still one of the most important elements in making our Bhutan tourism as special. Without our communities, without our people, there will be no Bhutan tourism. I mean, it's not only the landscape, it's not only but the more important element of our tourism is the community, is the living thing there, the humans, the community, the culture, and so without that, the Bhutan tourism will be not a Bhutan tourism. So therefore, they should be also getting a direct benefit from this tourism. So for that reason, and this trail gives the most opportunity with regard to this point.
That's great. That's great to hear that you have a trail that provides such a cultural opportunity for visitors to really experience the culture of Bhutan. Thank you so much for telling us about the Trans Bhutan Trail. Before we go, I wanted to mention a couple of things, and then I had one final question. But you've written some books recently. One of them is called Bhutan, Kingdom of Mindfulness, which came out this year, that has travel guidance and cultural wisdom, spiritual insight, and sustainability principles as some of the themes of the book. So I wanted to mention that for listeners. You also have another book that came out last year in 2024 called Hercules of Tongchudrak.
Yes.
Did I pronounce that terribly? Was that even close?
No. You're very good because I was
Okay.
more or less laughing. No, that's good. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So what I wanted to ask that then I think in that book you do talk more about the gross national happiness idea that you mentioned earlier. I can't resist the opportunity, speaking to the former tourism minister of Bhutan, to ask about the concept of gross national happiness and what it is, how is it measured, and how is that working out? How has that changed Bhutan over time to be measuring gross national happiness?
Yeah, I mean, this is something really important to us. In fact, what Bhutan is today, in this modern Bhutan, is mainly, I think, because of this development philosophy of gross national happiness. And even our tourism policy of high value, low volume is very much rooted in this government philosophy. So, in other words, whatever we do in our country in terms of government, whether it is a private or government initiative, whatever policy we do, we have to be guided by this policy. And what we mean by that is, like, for example, if you want to adopt or develop a new policy, like, for example, I mean, I'll just give an example. Tourism policy of high value, low volume, it was there since 1974. But the first written policy, it was during my time when I was heading the Tourism Council. We put together in written a written policy for on high value, low policy. But before that, we didn't have a written policy as such. It was just by just a simple statement. So in 2022, we had the tourism policy, written policy on high value, low volume. We began to report, and that has to be screened under this gross national happiness process. So any new policy that is being developed or being adopted in the country has to pass the gross national happiness screening policy screening process,
Hmm.
and it is there is a kind of a it's not just a kind of statement, but there is a systematic procedure how your policy gets processed through this screening test and then how it gets. Like, for example, in tourism policy, it was not approved, we didn't pass in the first instance. We screened it through that system and then it came back to us with further comments and then again we have to revise it and then finally we got approved. Yeah. So therefore, any other, it has to be. And, we have these four pillars, basically the economic pillar, the cultural pillar, the environment pillar, and the governance pillar. So these are the four pillars that make this gross national happiness development philosophy. In a very simple term, what it means is gross national happiness development philosophy means it was actually envisioned or formulated by again our the fourth king, His Majesty King Jigme Singha Wangchuk, and again almost at the same time I think when he was very young, it seems that somebody in a reporter in India when he was traveling was happened to ask our Majesty what is the GDP of the country gross domestic product, but that instantly I think His Majesty maybe he was already thinking about it a long time back.
Hmm.
He said in Bhutan GDP is not important for us because national happiness is not important. So that's how it got straight. And then, of course,
Huh.
today we have this philosophy. In a very simple layman's term, what it means is a balanced approach to development. What we are seeing is when we talk about GDP, it's just about economic, material development, material gain and achievement. But when you talk about GNS, gross national happiness, while yes, as you can see understand from these four pillars, we have economic pillar is there, and we have governance, good governance, we have environment, culture. So we are saying when you talk about development, it's not just economic. We also need to take care of good governance. We also need to take care of our culture. We also need to take care of our environment. So therefore, in the process, when we adopt this approach, we are making some sacrifices. We are making compromises and some sacrifices for a short-term gain. Because when you follow this, similar like in tourism policy, when we follow this policies, development philosophy, we are always making a sacrifice and compromise in the present convenience or comfort or income
Hmm.
for the future. So this is basically a balanced approach, basically meaning a development with the values. We are not just going haphazardly and blindly following, and we are not entering into that kind of a rat race for economic development. So this is basically what it means. And in terms of measurements, we have everything in place. I think it is. While some might say this is those who are not aware of this might say it's just a kind of a statement and maybe it cannot be measured. Yes, we can measure the happiness, and every 5 years we do a nationwide survey
Hmm.
census we do on this, every 5 years that will give some indicators. And then, of course, as we on an annual basis, there are ways and means and set kind of a procedures and systems and methods to keep on tracking our happiness kind of thing. Yeah. So So it is now very well established kind of a science. It's not anymore a concept or an art, but it is very much well developed science. And in fact, not every year, but I think even at globally organized, led by Bhutan, we have this Gross
Hmm.
National Happiness Conference worldwide, and we go all around the world. So now, and also maybe you would also know, it was Bhutan's initiative at UN that today we are celebrating, I think, March 20 as the International Happiness Day, and it was our initiative, our proposal to UN.
Yes.
We proposed
Yes.
this, and then now it is globally being celebrated. Yeah. And I think before you close this, I want to also mention. Maybe you'll not ask. I mean, I'm sorry if I'm wrong. Now we are going a step above this GNH. Now what we are saying is the mindfulness city.
Ah, okay.
Did you hear about that?
No, explain that.
So now we are saying it is again is a vision. Is something that was created by our Majesty, our President King, and what we call this as a Gelifu Mindfulness City. And it is now already started the development of a city. Gelifu is, by the way, is the name of a place in our country, in the southern part of our country. So the main that city will be around developed around this present city called Gelifu, the Gelifu Mindfulness City, and it is going to be a special administrative zone. In total, we have an area around 2,500 square kilometer of Bhutan,
Wow.
much larger than Singapore, just for understanding. And it's going to be a special administrative zone. It's going to have its own laws and governance, and everything is going to be separate. While it is in the country, and we are saying this is kind of a one country, two system kind of a approach.
Hmm.
And for maybe for next 20 to 30 years, Gilfo Manful City will develop on its own. But then after 20, 30 years, once the Gulf of Manchu city is fully kind of developed, then again it will come back as one country. Then again it will join Bhutan. Now, the special thing about this Gulf of Manchu city is again it's supposed to be one of its first kind in the world.
Hmm.
Now, it is one step or ahead or above GNH because GNH is also basically we have said balanced development, but mindfulness city is even going to be more serious on that. Now we are going to pursue the economic development very, very much, yes, but it will be done in a mindful way, meaning the spiritualism will be play very high part, environment conservation and environmental. So basically, that whole city will be a green. Like even the transport you talk about, maybe I even heard that even the sound, the noise, because if you go to any other metropolitan city, it's such a mess. I mean, if you go to big metro city, the sound that you get in the
Hmm.
traffic and
Hmm.
everything. No, so in that city, even that will be taken care. Maybe it will be a very quiet place there. So it is going to be one of its kind city, and that's going to be. We are hoping this will be a model for the world, for as we embark into the 21st century. How can human beings, we can live more, comfortably, more peacefully, more harmoniously, not only for the human beings, but also for the nature, everything. So this is a big thing that is coming from Bhutan, and in fact, it is getting now widely spread in the world, and our His Majesty, our King, is leading this project, and we are all excited about this project. So this I just wanted to share.
No, that's fantastic. I look forward to seeing how that develops over the years to come. That seems really interesting.
Yes, yes.
I have one final question. What will surprise visitors about Bhutan?
What I would say is, and based on the interactions that I had with the visitors and what I hear from the people, visitors themselves, most visitors that I talk to, what they share with me will surprise a newcomer to Bhutan. And that is, they tell me that the moment that they enter our country, like suppose if you come by plane, when you come out of the plane, you start breathing our air and start seeing the place with your own, direct eyes. They tell that they feel as if they're, in a different kind of a world. So they get this out of this world kind of experience. And I think that really surprises our visitors. Of course, they come with a lot of expectations, especially when a visitor comes to Bhutan. Before they come, they think Bhutan is a very pristine, clean country. I mean, that is one area they have. But that feeling, that experience, I think
Hmm.
they are not told before. But I believe that really surprises them. And then, of course, when they start drinking our water and then start walking on our earth, they feel they're in a kind of a totally new world. So most of them, when they go back, they go as a different person, kind of awakened. I don't know for how long. I don't know how long does it sustain.
Hmm.
But definitely when we meet them at the departure point, they'll always say, "Oh my God! I mean, this is something I've never experienced anywhere else in the world. I'm going with totally a different person." So some kind of a spiritual awakening also seems to be happening. So I would say this would really surprise them. But of course, the listeners here will not believe me. So for yours, because
They
I
have
think
to,
my
yes,
yeah, you have to come
they have
here
to
and you have to
experience
live
it
that experience.
themselves. Yeah.
Yes. And in case if you happen to come here, if you don't get experience, you can charge me. So
Okay.
I'll be here too. Yes. Yes. That's what I would say, Jeremy.
Dorji Dhradhul, thank you so much for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. It was really a pleasure talking to you. I really enjoyed.
Thanks again to Dorji Dhradhul for coming on the show. And I hope that we've inspired you to visit Bhutan and hike at least some of the Trans Bhutan Trail while you're there. One thing that Dorji mentioned in our conversation is that there's a Buddhist nun who is hiking the trail. I looked into this and found out that Emma Slade, a Buddhist nun of British origin, is, as I record this episode in November 2025, is in progress in the middle of her through hike of the Trans Bhutan Trail. So maybe by the time you are listening, she will have finished her through hike. As background, in 2014, Emma Slade became the first Western woman to be ordained as a nun in the Drupa Kagyu lineage of Buddhism in Bhutan, and she is now known as Ani Pema Deki. In 2015, she founded a charity called Opening Your Heart to Bhutan, which donates money to help children and young people with special needs in areas of limited resources of Bhutan. And she's hiking the trail to raise money for her charity. Dorji speculated a little bit about how old she might be, and he was pretty close to right, I think. She is age 59 as I record this. So as Dorji pointed out, this trail is appropriate for people of any age. One other note, Dorji mentioned a good short section to see in the middle of Bhutan, and I wanted to repeat that. There's the section from Trongsa to Bumtang, which is in central Bhutan. So that's one section to look into if you want to hike a shorter section of the trail. And there's also the section from Dochula to Punakha. Punakha was the former winter capital of Bhutan, so it's a significant city in Bhutan as well. So I just wanted to point out those are two shorter sections that might be worth hiking if you visit Bhutan for a limited period of time rather than hiking the whole trail. All right, if you've enjoyed this episode, tell a friend about it, or better yet, give us a good review on whichever podcast service you use. And keep in mind that this podcast is entertainment and meant to spark your interest. If you decide to hike the trail, do your own research. Like anything else worth doing, outdoor adventure has risk. So when you go, pack your common sense. And when you get back, tell me how it went. Before we go, I'd also like to remind you to go to Outdoor Herbivore, buy some backpacking food for the holidays or to get ready for next year. Through the end of this calendar year at least, not sure after that, we will still have the discount code TWH10P, TWH10P, available for Trails Worth Hiking listeners to get a discount at Outdoor Herbivore. So I just wanted to quickly remind you of that. Let's talk about our next episode. So this was sort of a special episode. I'm releasing in between our regularly scheduled monthly episodes. I thought it was worth getting this out there sooner because it's such an interesting perspective that we haven't yet heard before on the show. That said, next time we'll be going back to the desert, to an otherworldly landscape in a massive national park, where we'll find solitude traversing a loop hike that is partly on dirt roads and partly an off-trail route through narrow canyons, where we'll hike through a unique landscape in one of America's most fascinating and dramatic deserts, as we travel the Cottonwood Marble Canyon Loop in Death Valley National Park in California. If you have any questions or feedback on this episode or ideas for future episodes, including if you want to be a guest and talk about a trail you've hiked, reach out to me at trailsworthhiking@gmail.com. By the way, I have lots of great episodes in the queue. In fact, way too many. But I will keep producing and releasing them as quickly as I can. If you've recorded one with me, I haven't forgotten about it. I'm getting there and it will get released eventually. The problem is that so many of you are bringing such interesting trails to my attention that I keep wanting to make more episodes. But that is a good problem to have. All right, so that'll do it for now. So start planning your next hike, and before you know it, you'll be on the trail. Thanks for listening.